Hello, everyone, and welcome in. It's right. It is game one of the Stanley Cup final. That's right. Tampa Bay Lightning are hosting the Montreal Canadiens in game one of this shortened season championship round. And I could not be more disappointed as a Boston Bruins fan. But as a hockey fan, I am excited, as I am every single year, to watch what will hopefully be a pretty great series. So, fellas, gentlemen, how are we feeling today? Are we excited for tonight? Are we ready to get this season ultimately concluded with what would hopefully be a great final series?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, let's be honest here. We're getting closer to a semblance of normalcy here, which is kind of nice. I mean, we're gonna have an NHL draft within a month of where it's supposed to be, and we're gonna have a next season that starts like pretty much a couple weeks where it's supposed to. So we're slowly getting there, albeit in drips and drabs. So you know what? Yeah, I'm pumped. I can't wait for this.
Yeah, that's the one thing. We're already a month into the normal offseason at this point, almost. I mean, the conclusion of the Stanley Cup final. Well, by the time this series ends, we will be in what would be the first month of the offseason, because generally the Stanley Cup final ends middle of June, and everyone's home and doing whatever, and we're almost in July. So this is going to be great. That's the one caveat. So for all of us who have teams that aren't in the final, it's going to be a very short off season as we turn around real quick. Before we get into this game real quick, though, I do want to mention some pretty sad news today. If you have not seen it already, the infant son of David Pastrnak, obviously the Boston Bruins forward, tragically passed away today. Just a very sad story for a guy that, regardless of who you are a fan of, I think he is one of the more likable players in this game, and I think obviously he carries himself very professionally. So it's certainly very, very sad news, and all hearts and everything are out to his family, because again, it's just a tragic story for a young kid who was probably pretty excited to be a father.
Yeah, it's terrible today to start the day off, the day of the Stanley Cup final. Thoughts and prayers to Pastor family in this very sad news today.
Yeah, and again, it's unfortunately it happens on this day that we should be all talking about the game one of Stanley Cup final, but again, he's part of the NHL family, and we saw an outpouring of support from players, coaches, and organizations for he and his girlfriend, and of course their family. So it's unfortunate that we had to wake up to that, like you said. But we do have a game today. We do have game one, and I want to start it out with something that I actually had to. I knew this, but I had to be refreshed, because the first thing I think of when I think of this series, right off the bat, is the goaltending matchup. You have Carey Price, you have Andrei Vasilevsky, who I begrudgingly over the years have now said that he is very much the best goalie in the world, in my opinion, right now. And Carey Price, he can play like the best goalie in the world at any given moment, based on what he can do and what he has done in this league. It is also the fourth matchup between two Vezina winning goaltenders in NHL Stanley Cup final history. And what was very curious, and this is where, both of you guys will appreciate this, or maybe not, because again, it has something to do with your guys' team. As you can see behind Jim's shoulder there, the guy that I'm about to talk about, number hanging up on the wall there.
Yeah.
Martin Brodeur was not a part of any of those goaltending matchups, as crazy as that sounds.
Nope.
Because when he faced off against Eddie Belfour and Patrick Waugh, he had yet to win a Vezina trophy, which seems absurd. Because there may not be a lot of things we necessarily agree on, the three of us, as we are all fans of different teams. But I have a great appreciation for Martin Brodeur, and will argue to the death that he is the best goalie to ever play the game. But hey, he just never happened to be part of one of these Vezina duels, and it's kind of a shame. Do you guys know the other three that I'm talking about off the top of your head? I know I'm putting some pressure on you.
I know him. It was Dominik Hasek versus Eddie Belfour in 1999.
Yep.
Yep.
That is one. I have the other two right here, actually. Cheat codes right here.
Look at that.
1996.
Yep.
Patrick Waugh.
Look at him go.
Yeah,
Teaser.
Patrick Waugh and John Van Viesbroek, and then Eddie Belfour makes yet another appearance against Tom Barrasso in 1992. But yeah, it just speaks to how big of a matchup this is between the two goaltenders. Obviously, the two teams involved. As a Bruins fan, there is not a single player on the Canadiens that I like. I don't care if he was a former Bruin or whatnot. It doesn't matter. As soon as they put on that white and red, you just become persona non grata. You don't belong in my fandom. But if you had to force me to wear a jersey or at least appreciate one player on the Montreal Canadiens, it's going to be Carey Price. And is he the Carey Price of 10 years ago? No. But he started to play like it the last several weeks, and that's all that really matters at this point. Now he just has to do it for what, 4, 5, 6 games? I don't know.
What's a few more games, right?
Yeah, it's not too bad.
That's just a few more games. No, and I could say that maybe this is the best Carey Price ever. Like he talks about the rest. You talk about the rest. Look at what he's done in the last playoffs. Now having the time off, he's been the best goalie in the playoffs now with Andrei Vasilevskiy, and the Canadiens go as Carey Price goes. I think this is the best team in front of Carey Price, and he doesn't when the Canadiens last won the Cup. Patrick Waugh was, you could argue, their best player, and he won the Conn Smythe. Mostly, if Montreal's Carey Price didn't get the Conn Smythe trophy, but he doesn't have to be Mr. Carey Price time. He's got to match Andrei Vasilevskiy now, but they're winning because their defensive structure is so good.
No, look, I'm of the belief that if the Canadiens are to win this series, it has to be on the shoulders of Carey Price. And that's not to say that, there's going to be other factors that go in their favor. Obviously, the addition of Cole Caulfield late in the season and into the playoffs has obviously been a huge boost. Like Jim said, the defensive structure has been great in front of Carey Price. But I think at the end of the day, the Lightning are the more talented team, the more cap-used team, if you want to get into that. And at the end of the day, I think right now in their hierarchy, Andrei Vasilevskiy is the better goaltender. But as we know, and we've seen in playoffs past, a goaltender can negate all those other positives for the Lightning and steal games for a team like the Canadiens, who can win those low-scoring games, can go in and win 2-1, 1-0. Very much shades of those mid-90s, early 2000s Devils teams that really thrived on, defensive structure and strong goaltending. And right now, like you said, this may be the best Carey Price is or has played in his entire career, certainly his postseason career, because if there was one blemish on his long career with the Canadiens, it was just not getting it done in the postseason. And so far, he's shown he can do it. So is he the X factor easily for the Canadiens, I think? Does anyone have another guy that probably sticks out? I think he's really the biggest factor for the Canadiens moving forward. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
It's twofold. One, look, Carey Price has played well in pretty much 4 of the last 5 postseasons he's been in. He's actually been the reason why they've gotten far or nearly as far as they could have gone. The teams just weren't that good. Look, let's be honest. The Montreal Canadiens have the most unsustainable penalty kill, it may be in the last 20 years in the playoffs. There has been no bigger jump. I've covered this team for the second half and into the postseason. Go figure, I am like a 4-leaf clover here when it comes to covering hockey teams for full press. So, it was Dallas last year, and this year it was Montreal. So why not? But joking aside, I think the X factor really comes down to for Montreal is twofold. One, it's how the penalty kill functions against Tampa, and two, look, I know what Nikita Kucherov said yesterday. I was there. I asked the freaking question. I didn't want to, but I had to be that guy. If he is actually anywhere near close to 100%, Montreal's penalty kill finally gets broken down. If he's not, and Carey Price makes one or two of those crazy saves like he did against Vegas, then we have a completely different series than anyone is expecting. And I tend to think the latter may actually happen, and this may be a longer series than anybody expects because of that Montreal penalty kill breaking down, but still being good. Because let's face it, goalies don't have a 950 save percentage on the penalty kill very often, let alone a 900 penalty kill save percentage. By the way, the last guy that did that over the course of an 80-game season, Andrei Vasilevsky, of course. So
Yeah,
I'm just saying the parallels in the series are mind-blowing.
Yeah, and look, the big question then becomes: can the Canadiens scoring keep up with? Let's assume Tampa's power play is good. Maybe they're not like firing on it all cylinders good, but all they got to do is be pretty good, and that means they're doing quite well for themselves. Can the Canadiens keep up scoring? I mean, obviously that means getting pucks by Vasilevsky, but that's just also meaning, can the Canadiens, a team that didn't really create a lot of offense for themselves, create offense regularly now against, again, perhaps the best team in the league at doing that? Go ahead, Jim.
I think they can for sure. I mean, look, I think they could do it for sure. I mean, you look at them and you say, okay, well, they didn't have a shot against Toronto, Winnipeg, Vegas. If they keep the games close, if it's 0-0 after the first period, the Canadiens just one goal and just win a hockey game. Look, they've already proven that they can come back from a deficit and win. And there's something about playing in the Bell Center when they shifts that, the ghosts may be coming over from the Forum. We saw what happened when Marc-Andre little puck bounce. But, he was really going and split a game. You're going home with home ice advantage. And I think, for me, outside of Carey Price and that penalty kill, obviously they got to stay out of the box for sure. Tampa is clicking at a 40% rate, and I don't know if they can continue. But to me, I think they scored like 5 guys in a series. Tampa Bay hasn't seen a player like this all playoffs, and obviously vice versa. The Canadiens haven't seen a team say 3 or more goals. I could see him doing it in the series. That line of him, Nick Suzuki, and Tyler Toffoli have been good. And let's not count out Philip Deneau's line either. I mean, Chris has covered this team, half the season now. Seeing what that line has done against Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner. They shut down Ehlers and Wheeler and Connor. Then they shut down Stone and Pat. If they can keep point Nikita Kucherov and Andre off the scoreboard, and then the rest of the lines back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy to think that you're looking at the evolution of Nick Suzuki. Look, Nick Suzuki got soundly creamed around the first part of this season defensively. I mean, people would make jokes about it among the press, how his line was always trucked in his own zone, and he couldn't do this and he couldn't do that. And well, now all he's done is managed to buoy one of the best second lines in hockey, and the numbers bear that out. I covered game 4 of the I guess you could call it now the Western quote unquote Western Conference Final, or the Stanley Cup semifinal, however you want to.
I think that's what they landed on, the semifinals.
Yeah, it's kind of more fun.
Yeah, the semifinal.
The semifinal. Yeah. And I remember saying this to Timmy Rosenthal, who works for Bruins Daily. I was like, the high danger chances are 17-0, Timmy, and this is not a misprint. I mean, I'm looking at this live as from the media site and from Natural Stats Trick. So it's corroborated. I'm like, this is not, I was like, what I'm watching is actually what I'm seeing. And really the only thing that's keeping Vegas in this game is Marc-Andre Fleury. And then obviously Nicholas Waugh goes on and scores the game winner in that overtime. But you could see then, and you could probably see that before in other games previously in the run, that wow, this Montreal team can really turn it on, and they can play this way consistently. gee, I wonder what the difference was between then and the regular season. Oh yeah, they finally got rest. I mean, this is one of the underlying things with this quote unquote COVID season. Montreal at one point played 21 games in about 30 nights. I mean, it was nuts. I mean, and I think it was 24 and like 40 or something like that, give or take. Um, and you consider all the players that had COVID, players that didn't have COVID, the quarantines and everything else, and how it affected other teams. And Montreal was able to just barely, and I do emphasize this, barely tread water. And that brought them together as a team. For lack, it sounds dumb. I hate cliches more than any person in this earth, but it served the purpose. It served the purpose. They got the week's rest. They beat Toronto. They got a little bit lucky at first against Winnipeg. Obviously, the Scheifele hit changed the entire series. From then, that just became a cakewalk. They got the extra rest they needed against Vegas, which, look, Vegas pounded them around upside down and sideways in game one. And look, Montreal's credit, they regrouped. They found a way to counter. They overcame the one weakness they had against Vegas, which was defensive zone faceoffs, which maybe Tampa gets to exploit that a little bit more. But I do believe, at least in the last game or two, Montreal was even able to shore that up behind Shea Weber and Jeff Petrie being able to, what I like to call, come to the gap guy in the offensive zone and be able to cover that guy before the secondary opportunity came. And that's what Vegas was feasting on the first few games of that series that Montreal couldn't cover. Now, can Tampa do that faster? Probably. But who's hurt from Tampa and who isn't is going to be a glorious question, obviously, because it's not just Kucherov that is hurt. There are a few other players that are banged up. Sergachev's a little bit banged up. Cernak's a little bit banged up. Stamkos is not 100%. I don't care what he says in a press conference, but he's not. And that's what you have to look at. You're not going to know, Ian, until they actually play a few, and not just one game, a few games, because the wear and tear of how Montreal plays is going to have an effect on not just Tampa Bay, but Montreal as well.
Well, and that's the thing too. Look, if it's just Kucherov that's injured, that's a big problem for Tampa, and his percentage of how good he is certainly going to be something that will have to be talked about because he's that important to this Tampa Bay team. But they are deep. Like you said, they certainly have the capability to overcome that. But now all of a sudden, those injuries to the third and fourth liners, those depth players become bigger. Now if Kucherov is slowed up and if Stamkos is slowed down, because now all of a sudden ace in the hole, which is Andrei Vasilevsky, becomes, Tampa doesn't want to have Andrei Vasilevsky be their best player. He can be, and he can be great still, but they want their offense and they want the team in front of them or in front of him to be the best player. If you're getting Carey Price as your best player, you're feeling pretty good. If Andrei Vasilevsky is your very best player, that means you're not putting the puck in the net. Maybe Kucherov is slowed a little bit, and then you start to get problems. Speaking of game one, teams that take a 1-0 lead in the best of 7 Stanley Cup Final Series hold an all-time record of 61-20. That's good for what, 753?
Yeah.
Tampa has lost all 3 of their game ones in their Stanley Cup final trips, and their 3 Stanley Cup final trips. Obviously, they're 2-1 in those scenarios, winning 2 and losing 1. I guess the question is it important for either of these teams to win game 1? Or obviously, yes, you want to win every single game. That's notwithstanding. But like you just said, Montreal has a knack for being able to come back. Losing isn't necessarily a death knell for this team. They can regroup and kind of recover. Obviously, Tampa, they can lose one game and win the next 4, so that's not a problem. Which team needs to win this more, or does it even matter who wins game 1 in this series?
Montreal needs it more. Throughout this postseason and last postseason, they lose the game. So
sorry, Hold on.
Doesn't
Hold on. I think your connection was dropping there, Jim. I'm gonna try to get back to you here in just a second, but you just dropped there on me. Chris, I'll move to you real quick.
Yeah, it probably is Montreal by a nose. I mean, both teams have shown that they can come back. Look, Tampa apparently doesn't believe winning the first game of a series at home is important. So, I mean, it doesn't make a difference to them. They come right back. Look against the Islanders. They lost they looked dead in game one against the Islanders. I thought, this is the same Tampa team that I saw. And I figured they weren't going to blow the barn off the building in game one, but I didn't think they would lose the way they did to the Islanders in game one. And that was concerning. And then of course, well, they go and casually win the series in 7 anyway, and win the 7th game with ease, mind you. I mean, yeah, it was 1-0. I understand that. And it took a very late block by some Ryan McDonough guy who still amazingly has turned back the clock. That's another underrated part of the series that we're eventually going to talk about in later primers, is how some players have just revitalized their careers. Patrick Maroon aside, but yeah, this is the thing. Montreal has to have this game more or less to set the tone. It's not a must-win by any stretch of the imagination. It's just one of those things where if you had a team that you preferred that needed this game a little bit more, it's Montreal for the sake of making this a longer series.
Yeah, no, I would definitely probably have to agree with that, just because, like you said, I mean, if this team is going to win the cup, which I think we all agree they're underdogs here, and rightfully so, they have to take advantage of every opportunity they get, and that includes stealing one in Tampa. Because as a Bruins fan, there's been far too many times they've gone back to the Bell Center, and I've had many a panic attack watching games unfold there. Now, again, it's not going to be the jam-packed, blow the roof off the stadium type atmosphere as it has been in years past, based on everything going on with COVID protocols and whatnot. But you're still going to get somewhat of a that aura, that environment that we all talk about. And look, I mean, as a hockey fan, I'd like a 7-game series. I just hope that as a Bruins fan, that 7th game just goes on and on forever, for all eternity, and we never have a winner. And I can never ever have to say either the Canadiens or the Lightning won the cup this season. But unfortunately, I'm not going to get what I want, guys. So tell me, before we let everyone go and go enjoy their games and their pork chops and everything like that that's on the grill and all that good stuff, who's winning the series? Who are we going to be talking about in a few days or next week on this show hoisting the Stanley Cup? And I'll start with you, Jim.
I'm going to take Montreal. I think they're going to win the Stanley Cup. They got that feel, that team of, you want to call it destiny, whatever. The breaks have gone their way. They've made their own breaks. But I like the way Montreal is playing. Carey Price is playing at an all-time high. They have 4 lines that are rolling. Their defense, which was a weakness, is playing really well. Again, that penalty kill is unbelievable. Special teams is underrated. Their coaching staff, Dominic Ducharme, even though he's not there, he'll be back for game 3. Luke Richardson, all those guys, they've put a belief in this team that they belong with anybody, and they've proven it against Vegas. Yeah, Tampa has shown that they can bounce back after losses and stuff, but it's awfully hard to repeat. And Chris and I both know when the Devils were there in 2001, there's something, and they had a chance to close it out and they didn't do it. It's awfully tough to get that 4th victory, and Montreal just feels like that team. If they can hang around and steal a game here and there, and then all of a sudden the series is tied, and they got to go back on the road and win a game, and they're going home with it. Look for them to win this series. They've won, they've won on the road, they've won at home. This team has a chance to do this, and I think Montreal is going to win, and I like what they bring to the table. Nothing against Tampa, but it's awfully tough to repeat.
Chris, what say you?
This one hurts because, I don't know, cover Montreal, and I still like, as much as I like their chances, this is just one of those cases where I'll be honest. Tampa Bay is the better team. Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay, for offensively, defensively, special teams, is the better team. Now, playoff-wise, who's the better team? It's almost even in different ways. You have to realistically look right now that Tampa Bay has the power play. Montreal has the penalty kill. That is the ultimate battle in this series. And of course, if Chris Lee refs any games, because that's the only reason why the Tampa didn't sweep, let's be honest, is because Chris Lee was, look, it's a cold reality. The officiating in some of these series has been curious. We'll leave it at that. That being said, I do believe if Tampa Bay gets enough power play opportunities and they draw enough penalties, they are ultimately going to win this series, but it's going to be not easy by any stretch. And Carey Price is going to steal at least 2 games almost by himself, along with some handy dandy goal or two from that youthful looking line that's 21 or younger. In the end, Tampa Bay is going to eke out a 7th game at home. It almost has this weird feeling of, team of destiny, and then Tampa lowers the boom on them in Game 7.
Sometimes it's the expected result that ultimately comes true. I mean, we've seen it in other sports where it's like this team is just a juggernaut. They're good, but you say, oh, they can't. Maybe they can't do it again, or maybe they've shown so. No, they're just that good. I might have to get a drink of water before I make my pick here, because again, I'm being objective when I make this pick, because I hate both teams. And based on who I'm going to pick, you're again, I hope I don't get kicked out of Bruins Nation, maybe kicked off my podcast, all that stuff, because again, it's
there we go.
Right. Race for
hold on. I had a drink of water here. I am going to pick the Montreal Canadiens.
Wow.
To win in 7. And a lot of it has to do, again, with just Chris, you brought up a great point. There's a difference between how good these teams were in totality of this entire season and how good these teams have been just strictly the playoffs. And there's really not, I'm not going to say there's really not a difference, but the margin of difference is negligible, and it's not as big as some see it. So do I think Tampa's the better team on paper? Yes. But I'm concerned about Kucherov. I'm concerned about those injuries. And then at the end of the day, call it a little bit of goalie bias, but I look at Carey Price and I feel like, forget about team of destiny. Talk about player of destiny. I mean, talk about a guy who, for all intents and purposes looked like, a guy that was at the end, and he was just going to be another guy that never won a Stanley Cup, another great player that, will often get mentioned behind the Marc-Andre Fleury's and what's his face out in Los Angeles, and all these guys that have won a couple cups. Matt Murray, but they won cups. But Carey Price, he was great. Blah blah blah. Blah. No. Carey Price has been a great goaltender his entire career. He just happens to not have won a Stanley Cup. And like I said, this is killing me. And like I said, I hope I have friends right now that aren't disowning me. But yeah, I'm going with the Montreal Canadiens to win the series in 7 games, and it's because they're going to be able to play much of their game. Not always. Tampa's going to have their days. They're going to have their moments. But at the end of the day, Carey Price and the Montreal Canadiens will end Canada's 28-year Stanley Cup winning drought and further torment the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there is some pleasure out of this, although it's really backwards and upside down for me. And again, this is a very confusing time for me. But yeah, the Montreal Canadiens in 7 games. So if you'd like to chastise me for that, if you'd like to yell at me for that, Bruins fans, give me a follow on Twitter at IGLEN31. And of course, if you want to hit these guys up on Twitter, let them know where you guys are at, Jim, Chris.
Yeah, at Jim Berenger on Twitter.
Perfect.
Yep, I'm at Chris Wassel DFS. Let's roll.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
That's right. So everyone, hope you enjoy Game 1. Hope you enjoy this series. We're going to be back here live on Full Press NHL on Twitter, of course, on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Full Press Coverage, and of course on the YouTube page. You can find the link there on the website. It's something. It's a small link. I don't know the actual name of the link, so I can't actually read it out to you. It's YouTube. Search Full Press Coverage you'll find it. And like I said, we'll be back here throughout the week talking Stanley Cup final, and hopefully what I said at the beginning of the show, where it gets to Game 7 and nobody wins, actually happens, and I will enjoy the rest of my summer. Folks, have a great night, and we'll talk to you later.
Have a good night, everybody. Enjoy Game 1.
Good night.